This is Jay with Digital Hype TV, and this week we're reviewing the Sony a6300. We did a full stop review of the a6000, which you can check out here. And for this video, we're going to be taking a look at the differences and similarities to that camera. There's a noticeable difference when you pick up the a6300 compared to the a6000. It's heavier, the grip is more robust, the magnesium body really feels more sturdy, it's weather sealed, and the viewfinder actually has twice the resolution of the a6000's viewfinder. It really is trying to emulate that sense of using optical viewfinder that you find in DSLRs. You have a AEL autofocus manual focus switch, and you have the ability to assign your video record button as well. A lot of people didn't like the placement of the record button at the a6000, which is pretty consistent around their new mirrorless line. Now you can go into your settings and switch record to C1, which might be comfortable for you if you're holding the camera, running and gunning, getting a few shots without having to worry about putting your finger back here. In terms of image quality, the camera stands up to the a6000 and improved just a little bit more. The JPEG processing has been improved and the dynamic range is similar, although we have noticed that you go into Lightroom and tweak the raw files compared to the a6000. You have a little bit more wiggle room. Again, this is a 24 megapixel sensor. It's an improved sensor from the old camera. The autofocus has been improved greatly. So if you're shooting more action in sports, this camera will actually do a pretty decent job. But for nature and wildlife, the camera is way better, especially now that you can use the silent shooting mode with the high burst. Low light is a tad bit better than the a6000. You can get stills at 6400 ISO without getting too much noise in there. It might not be best for a professional print, but it's definitely good for putting online. The autofocus has been improved, whether it's in lock-on or zone autofocus. We found that the camera can track moving objects a little bit better than the a6000. You might even be able to use it for more professional events like sports or action shots. The a6300 can get a few extra hundred shots out compared to the a6000, but the battery life might not be there for a lot of people. I think if you're shooting video on 4K, you get about an hour of recording. We took this out into New York and got a few shots throughout the entire day. Not too consistently, but it did last us a good 6 hours, with moderate use. One thing that we appreciate about the modifications to this body is that on the mode dials, you now have a custom 1 and 2 modes. It's really good for us. We shoot a lot of video. We typically set 1 to shoot 24 frames per second, and we set 2 to shoot 60 frames per second. This camera has a new 4K sensor, similar to the A7S Mark II. The camera shoots 4K at 24 frames per second and 30 frames per second, as well as 1080p at 24, 30, 60, and 120 frames per second. Some things to note though, with the 4K, if you need to shoot in 30 frames per second for whatever reason, the image slightly crops in a little bit. It's a pretty great image across the board, but once you get to 120 frames per second, you get a little softness, a lot more artifacts in the video. So I would say the 120 frames per second might be a nice fun video mode to shoot in, but it may not be the best if what you need is a real crisp image. Now what we really appreciate about this camera with the inclusion of 4K and 120 frames per second is that it allows people who want to get great video to shoot without having to spend 3 times the price on an A7S Mark II or losing the ability to change lenses by using an RX100 and RX10. The 4K in this camera is really beautiful. It uses the entire sensor and down samples all those megapixels. Although you can get the XAVC codec in the a6000 with the latest firmware, what that camera doesn't give you is the ability to shoot in log that this camera does. When you're shooting in log, it basically gives you an expanded dynamic range for your video. So it comes out very flat, very almost gray looking. Once you take it into editing, you can color it and get more control over the look of your video. So just as in its photo modes, the video autofocus has improved as well. Zone autofocus works just as well as it does in photos. The face recognition will track a person's face pretty consistently, but if you leave the camera on autopilot in a wide autofocus setting and just don't touch it, even if you have the subject in focus at first, the camera might phase in and out for no real reason. We can confirm that in 4K video, the rolling shutter is pretty drastic, but We're sure that the almighty Sony gods will fix it with a firmware update somewhere along the way, so just buy it. Or not. I don't know, it's your money, you pay your taxes. You can't tell me what to do. I'm watching this video, I pay for the camera? No, you know that's not true. Another addition related to video is you can now use microphones with a 3.5mm audio jack. Though there is no headphone mount, so you're getting all the pink, but none of the stink. Another great addition that works for photo and video is the ability to charge your camera via the micro USB port while you're using it. This is great if you're shooting something like a long event and you don't want to swap out the battery too much, or if you want to shoot something cool like a long time lapse shooting from day to night. Sony isn't cutting any corners with this camera in terms of audio either. The in-camera mics won't record audio as clean as an external mic, but it will be good for scratch, and we really appreciate that Sony takes that into consideration when they upgrade their cameras. With all that being said, we're gonna take this puppy out to the park. J's to the court, the meatball to the pho, and the dog to the barbecue. So we're out here, we're gonna get some video and some photos. We're gonna get some 4K, 120 frames per second. We're also gonna test out the autofocus and punch in for some stills to show you all the detail that you can really get from this camera. To do that, we're using the FE 1635. It's a new lens from Sony, and to really get the best out of the sensor, you have to use some high quality glass like this. The camera comes kitted with the 1650, but it's not the best lens. It's good for a starter, but we think that this lens will do a bit of a better job showing you just how great this camera is. We're gonna be shooting on high bursts throughout all this. You know, if you have it, why not? Nothing's gonna stay still for you out here, so it's good to have the camera bursting while you can. We don't have it on silent shooting right now. Once we see some animals, we might switch over to that. When you have the silent shooting mode on, I believe you can only shoot at about 6 to 8 frames per second. When you're shooting it like this, when the shutter is closing down, you get that full 11 frames per second burst. This is a bit of a wider angle lens, but on the APS-C sensor, you see my butt, Josh? But on the APS-C sensor, it's good for some close-up shots. We're not gonna be sniping any birds from the trees, but it should pick up a lot of detail that we find out here. I'm loving the dynamic range on this camera. Same as the a6000, but the image seems to be a bit more refined. The colors are popping out a little bit more. We're shooting these in RAW, so of course you can always alter the picture as you edit. This 1635 is pretty good for landscapes. We'll probably set it up out here later on to get a time lapse and put that up later for you guys. We can put in like a stock time lapse. We're actually biology majors at our college. We do this as a little hobby because our parents can pay for all these cameras for us. My dad's not really dead. He bought another BMW after he crashed in that canyon. The autofocus is pretty amazing on this camera. Sometimes it'll hunt for your subject, but once it locks on, it really doesn't phase in and out as much as you would, especially when you're properly exposed in a setting like this. One thing to note about shooting 120 frames per second and 4K is that when you're shooting, the monitor actually dims down to its lowest brightness setting. I think a lot of people say it's to help the camera from overheating while shooting. Fortunately, we've actually done a few tests. We shot a lot in 120, a lot in 4K. We kind of just left the camera running for a bit, and we haven't had any overheating issues, probably due to the small size of the sensor. It really helps out in that respect. Right now, we're actually using the wide area autofocus just to kind of see how this camera will perform when you're kind of shooting casually, not too seriously. As I said before, the zone autofocus will probably be your best bet for getting accurate autofocus, but the wide zone is doing pretty well right now. Another cool feature about this camera is that you can actually set the monitor at 120 frames per second. It's really smooth, and it's a really helpful feature when you're shooting with those settings on. This camera shoots at 800 ISO natively when shooting in log, compared to the A7S Mark II, which shot at 1600 and 3200. You won't need as many ND filters as you would with those cameras. Fly away, birds. The weather is treating us pretty fairly right now. I wish we could have had, a little bit more drastic conditions to test out how weather sealed this camera is. That's one thing I really enjoy, or that's one feature that I really admire about this camera. Sony's really trying to push this as a nature and wildlife camera. And once they add more weather sealed lenses to their lineup, I think they're going to be real big contenders, matching a lot of Nikon and Canon cameras. A lot of people feel like they've done that already. Now, we said that the a6000 was one of the best all-around cameras that you could get, whether you were a soccer mom or a fledgling snuff filmmaker. The a6300 improves upon so many aspects of that camera that we want to say it is a true successor in that respect. It's great for photo and it's great for video, whether you're shooting professionally or just as a hobby. Personally, we're actually going to keep our a6000. It's a really great B cam for our A7S Mark IIs, and actually our 30-day return window is about to run dry on this baby. Thanks, Amazon. That was our full stop review of the Sony a6300. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like the video, subscribe to our channel. Next week, Josh, I think someone's trying to steal the butterfly collection. Release the cats, make me some tea, make me some banh mi. I'll see you later, Dad. My dad would have been really proud of how far this channel's come.